The call to cut carbon dioxide emissions remains a contentious issue at the UN Climate Change Conference in Bali. South Korea struggles to clean up the largest ever oil spill in its waters. Leaders from European and African nations meet in Portugal for the second EU-Africa summit. And negotiations over the future status of Kosovo end in deadlock. Welcome to Worldwide Watch. I'm James Aiken in Beijing. China's top advisor, Jia Qinglin, has held talks with Toshihiro Nikai, the chairman of the General Council of the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, at the Great Hall of the People. Jia says that bilateral ties are now seeing sound momentum and opening up opportunities for further development. He says both countries improving high-level exchanges and enhancing political mutual trust. Jia says he wants deeper economic and trade cooperation and enhanced cultural ties. He says both countries should properly handle sensitive issues and take good care of the political base. Toshihiro Nikai says that having exchanges is vital. Next year marks the 30th anniversary of the Sino-Japan Peace Friendship Treaty. Nikai says Japan is ready to join hands with China to push forward the bilateral relations to a higher level. Top economic policy makers from the United States and China are set to meet next Wednesday. The U.S. Treasury's special envoy for China says this third round of strategic economic dialogue is likely to yield a string of solid results. Alan Homer says he likes the scheme and says it has led to many key deals being signed between China and the U.S. He says he believes that talks this time are likely to see both sides reaching agreement on environmental protection, energy safety, and product quality. Homer says Chinese reforms are likely to benefit the two countries, even though the speed of those proposed reforms remains in dispute. The UN Climate Change Conference in Bali is wrapping up its first week of discussion. Among the most contentious issues on the table is the call on developed nations to cut their carbon emissions. Ji Leo Shan has more.
Delegates from nearly 190 nations are likely to agree to further negotiations. They want a new international accord that will replace the 1997 Kyoto Protocol on global warming. The new protocol, which has already been rejected by the United States, will bind 36 industrialized countries to cut their greenhouse gases. On average, the signatories must reduce their emissions by 5% below the 1990 levels, and they must do this between 2008 and 2012. The conference president, Indonesia's environment minister, said on Saturday he is hopeful Washington will eventually be brought on board. Meanwhile, the UN's chief climate scientist has suggested that the targets demanded of the U.S. could be achieved independent of national legislation.
I suppose there are two distinct ways by which this could be done. One would be, let's say, the U.S. administration committing itself to certain actions. The other approach would be independent of what the U.S. administration does. Several states in the U.S. and several other entities over there decide to take action on their own, and the sum total of that would amount to a commitment, you could say, equivalent to a national commitment.
The spotlight this weekend is on an informal meeting of the trade ministers in attendance. It is the first time such a meeting has been held on the sidelines of a climate change conference. The trade talks began around midday. It focused on how trade policies can promote economic growth, but at the same time also shield the environment. This is considered especially crucial since the UN has warned of ever more droughts, heat waves, disruptions to farming, and rising seas. Ji Liu Shan, CCTV.
Well, meanwhile, the UN says China is doing what it can to fight global warming and is very aware of the challenges posed by the impact of climate change. Officials from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change made the comments during the UN Climate Conference in Bali. They also say China has been making major investments and progress in hydro projects and renewable energy sources. Li Xiang has that story.
China has been making significant progress in converting to high-efficiency sources of energy. The chairman of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change made the remarks during the UN Climate Conference in Bali on Friday. Chinese officials say the country is now in the process of industrialization, so controlling greenhouse gas emissions is an arduous job for the country, but the government considers it a must-do endeavor. Stepped-up efforts are being made to achieve energy efficiency goals, among them reducing energy consumption per unit of GDP by 20%, increasing the forest coverage rate to 20%, and increasing carbon sink by 50 million tons over 2005 level. Meanwhile, the government is pushing forward a series of actions to deploy clean and less carbon technologies. China is closing down backward energy-intensive plants and replacing them with advanced ones. The country is also implementing energy conservation programs aimed at more than 1,000 key energy-intensive enterprises. International environmentalists spoke highly of such moves, saying China has done a good job in promoting renewable energy. They estimate that by 2010, renewable energy in China, including solar power and wind power, will increase to 10% of the country's total energy consumption per year. Li Xiang, CCTV.
The largest oil spill in South Korea's history has started to wash up on the country's western shore. The Coast Guard is struggling in high waves and strong winds to keep more oil from washing up on beaches. Hundreds of troops, police, and residents are using buckets to remove dense crude from Malipo. That's a scenic beach and a national maritime park. The spill happened Friday when a crane on a barge slammed into a supertanker. 66,000 barrels of oil have been dumped into the ocean. Strong winds and currents have spread the oil slick to an area about 2 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers long. Coming up next on Worldwide Watch. Leaders of European and African nations meet in Lisbon for the second EU-Africa Summit. And the UN Secretary General is told that talks on the future status of Kosovo have failed.
Delicate products, creating a brilliant future together. The best of Chinese machinery, hardware made, Chang'an, Dongguan, China. The era of healthy herbal drinks. Keiko health drinks, rare herbal extracts, natural tastes for more nourishing life. Drink Keiko to improve your health.
Lean unto your body, and true love, there can be no distance.
In love's true moments, the Chinese color is my only choice. True love for real man. The 7-brand Chinese color. True Love series.
CCTV9, China's only English-language news channel, broadcasts throughout China and across the globe. CTV Golden Bridge is CCTV International's exclusive advertising agent and can put your company in touch with an audience of millions.
Leaders from Africa and European Union member states have gathered in Lisbon for the second EU-Africa Summit. The event is aimed at reaching an Africa-EU Strategic Partnership Cooperation Agreement. Sun Wei explains.
The second EU-Africa summit will bring together almost all leaders from the 27-nation European Union and the 53-member African Union. Participants will discuss diverse issues, including peace and security, human rights, development, and trade. Joint measures to tackle climate change and control migration are also on the agenda. On the sidelines, meetings will be held between business communities, municipalities, and non-government organizations from both continents. The second EU-Africa summit was originally scheduled in 2003, but was delayed several times because the EU opposed the participation of Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe, who was accused of vote rigging in 2002. After taking the EU's rotating presidency this July, Portugal garnered support within the EU to host the second summit and expressed hope that Mugabe could attend. British Prime Minister Gordon Brown is staying away from the conference because of Mugabe's plan to participate. The EU is still Africa's biggest trading partner, amounting to $218 billion last year, and Africa is the EU's biggest aid recipient, taking about half of what the bloc hands out each year. Sun Wei, CCTV.
Negotiations between Kosovo's ethnic Albanian leaders and Serbia over the future status of Kosovo are deadlocked. That's the conclusion of a report handed to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. But Russia, however, says that talks between Belgrade and Pristina should continue even after the December 10th deadline. Pan Dung has details.
The report by a troika of US, Russian and European mediators says negotiations failed because neither party was willing to cede its position on a fundamental question of sovereignty. The report says Pristina insists on its preference for Kosovo's supervised independence, but Belgrade has rejected the proposal and restated its preference for maintaining Kosovo as part of Serbia. Meanwhile, Russia is urgent for the negotiations to continue.
But we certainly believe that it was a very worthwhile exercise and that it was an exercise that produced some serious results. Well, it may be premature to talk about confidence between the two parties, but certainly we think that it was important for them to start overcoming their long-standing hostility.
Kosovo has threatened to declare independence if no deal is reached on its final status before December the 10th. The UN has announced the report will be transferred to the Security Council on Sunday. It will be discussed on December the 19th. Pan Dung, CCTV.
Controversy is growing over the CIA's admission that it destroyed at least 2 videotapes in 2005 documenting the interrogation of terrorists. But the agency's director says the tapes were destroyed to protect the safety of undercover police officers and no longer had intelligence value anyway. Gui Xiaozeng has the details.
The Central Intelligence Agency has this week acknowledged making video recordings of the interrogation of terrorism suspects using techniques that critics have denounced as torture. One of the destroyed videos showed the interrogation of first detainee in CIA custody, Abu Zubaydah. He alleges he was tortured for months before being transferred to the Guantanamo Bay prison camp from CIA secret jails in 2006. The New York Times informed the CIA that it would disclose the incident in Friday's newspaper. That forced CIA Director Michael Hayden to write a letter on Thursday to the agency's staff to explain the matter. He said that if the tapes were to be leaked, they would put the identity of CIA agents at very serious risk. But some CIA officials told the press in private that the agency was concerned that such tapes documenting controversial interrogation methods could expose them to greater risk of legal jeopardy. Human rights groups also condemned the agency's actions.
The claim that they were trying to protect their agents is totally disingenuous. It's undoubted that there are hundreds, if not thousands or even millions, of files and photos and emails in the CIA's possession that, if leaked, would disclose or reveal the identity of CIA agents. And we don't assume that the CIA is going around destroying every single one of those files. This was a deliberate decision to destroy evidence, and may very well have been evidence of a crime scene.
The U.S. denies practicing torture or handing over suspects to countries that do so. CIA interrogation methods are classified, but the New York Times reported in October that the Justice Department had in 2005 secretly approved the agency's use of harsh interrogation techniques. Among them, head slapping and simulated drowning or waterboarding. President George W. Bush has repeatedly defended CIA methods as legal and carried out by trained professionals. It was not clear who within the CIA authorized the destruction of the tapes. But current and former government officials said it had been approved at the highest level of the agency. Hui Xiaozeng, CCTV.
Police in the U.S. have released the first images of the gunman in Wednesday's shooting rampage. The teenager killed 8 people in a busy department store in Omaha before turning the gun on himself. Here again is Gui Xiaozeng.
The 3 images show 19-year-old Robert Hawkins walking into the mall unarmed, wearing glasses and a black zippered sweatshirt. But 6 minutes later, the images show Hawkins returning through an entrance decked with holiday decorations. This time there is an apparent bulge under his clothing. In the last image, he is shown with his sleeves rolled up, aiming the AK-47 to fire. Witnesses say the gunman hit shoppers with a hail of bullets from the 3rd-floor balcony. Terrified people began running for their lives.
I never saw so much blood. Well, we had to go to the Hamptons.
Among the victims, 6 store employees and 2 customers. Police said they received an emergency call from someone inside the mall, while shots could be heard in the background. By the time the officers arrived 6 minutes later, the shooting was over. The gunman was found dead on the 3rd floor with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Police have reviewed surveillance tape, a suicide note, and Hawkins' last conversations with those close to him. But they say they're not sure if they ever will be able to know exactly why the young man went to the mall and opened fire. Hui Xiaozeng, CCTV.
In just a moment on Worldwide Watch, emergency crews halt search and rescue operations at the site of a deadly explosion in Shanxi province. And hundreds of people are being monitored in Uganda after an Ebola virus outbreak kills 22 people.
"7,000 years ago, our ancient Chinese ancestors took a fancy to a strange greenish stone and began fashioning decorative items out of it. This was the beginning of the Chinese jade culture. With time, jade became a symbol of power, wealth, and good fortune. Even today, jade retains a certain air of mystique. New Frontiers explores the long history of China's jade culture, only on CCTV International.
Emergency crews have stopped search and rescue operations after a gas explosion in a coal mine in North China's Shanxi province. 104 bodies have been recovered. Li Xiang with the latest.
Relatives of the victims are at the site of the Xinyao coal mine, a village run coal mining venture in Hongtong, Linfeng City. More than 30 bodies are still waiting to be identified. Preliminary investigations suggest a coal dust explosion caused the accident. Only 15 miners survived. The mine has a valid license, which allows it to operate in only 2 coal seams. But the colliery managers illegally run another coal seam without approval, and that is where the explosion occurred.
We must find the cause of the accident, and we must learn from this tragedy and thoroughly implement safety regulations. Only by doing so can we improve mining safety nationwide and prevent this kind of tragedy from happening again.
The explosion happened around 11 p.m. on Wednesday, but managers at the scene didn't report the accident until 6 hours later, instead preferring to lead their own rescue efforts. Their delay cost crucial time. Police have arrested the manager of the mine and have issued an arrest warrant for the owner. Li Xiang,
CCTV.
In Uganda, the Ebola virus has killed 22 people out of 101 suspected cases. Now hundreds more people are being monitored. Liu Yanhua has the latest.
The Ebola fever has continued to spread in western Uganda, sparking panic amongst the public. 22 people have died of the fever and 11 health workers have been infected. A new situation report shows the epidemic spreading in the Bandibugo district, where the first case was found. The 5 sub-counties of the district are affected, putting about 250,000 people at risk. To curb the spread of the disease, authorities have begun establishing quarantine centers and also confining people who had contact with Ebola cases.
We had so far discovered 338 contacts whom we are monitoring. These are people who got in touch with the suspects or participated in burying people who had died.
The government has drawn up a $3.5 million operational plan for fighting the deadly disease. Meanwhile, support from international aid agencies has also started trickling in. Ebola is one of the deadliest pathogens, usually causing a 50 to 90% death rate in an outbreak. The virus that hit Uganda is a new strain of Ebola, seemingly milder than 4 previous strains. The outbreak started in August, but was just confirmed last Thursday by lab results from the U.S. The last Ebola outbreak in Uganda was in 2000, killing more than 200 people. Liu Yanhua, CCTV.
Well, Uganda's neighboring countries, including Rwanda, Kenya, and Tanzania, have been on high alert over the Ebola disease. Kenyan experts have joined the International Disaster Response Unit team to stop the spread of the disease in western Uganda. Japan is hosting a movie festival dedicated to short films made using mobile phones. The Pocket Films Festival is celebrating a new approach to filmmaking. Zhang Yong with today's Tech Update.
Mobile movie making is being celebrated in Japan this week. The festival features 48 movies, all shot on camera-equipped cell phones. The films are hazy and raw, but extremely personal. The pocket-sized statements on film were selected from more than 400 entries in an international contest. The films, streaming on monitors of cell phones strapped to tables, are filled with everyday shots. Some were literally taken on a run with streets and cars driving past in a blur. Lacking the typical grandeur of standard films, they offer grainy but patiently taken close-ups that don't rely on zooms and other fancy editing techniques. The Pocket Film Festival in Japan marks yet another use of the omnipresent portable phone, which is already used for emails, surfing the internet, reading novels, and navigating on digital maps. Making movies with them was simply the next logical step. The film festival also points to an important emerging art form.
There is such an intimacy between the film and its creator. The one watching the film on the mobile can overlap the experience that the filmmaker is having. The mobile phone is also something you always carry around. We can discover surprising dramas through the experience, and I think that is why it is so much fun.
Unlike regular films that require lots of money, people, and time, the cell phone film is an easy, cheap, one-man operation. And even its relatively poor visual quality can be an advantage. The festival has attracted some entries from abroad, including Singapore, South Korea, and France. The Pocket Film Festival runs until Sunday, December the 9th. Zhang Yong, CCTV.
That is our time for this edition of Worldwide Watch on CCTV International. Stay tuned for a live edition of Dialogue next. I'm James Aiken. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Thanks. And looking at the weather for China. Now this morning, central and eastern areas saw a large scope of foggy weather. Parts of Henan, Hubei, Anhui, Jiangxi and Hunan saw heavy fog. The visibility in Zhangzhou was only 100 metres at 11 a.m. Now the large scope of foggy weather is set to continue tomorrow. Jiangxi will see fog decrease. Yesterday was the Chinese solar day named Greater Snow. Now, generally, snowfall is frequent during this time. However, only northern Xinjiang saw snowfall yesterday. Northwestern Xinjiang saw heavy snow. Wenzhou received 13 millimetres of extremely heavy snow. Tomorrow, wet weather will mainly cover Guizhou through Chongqing all the way to Jiangsu. Qinghai and Tibet will see wet weather ease off. Eastern Gansu, Shanxi and southern Hebei will see snow or sleet. Most of Guizhou will see wet weather until Friday, which is good news to alleviate drought conditions there. Now on Monday, parts of central Inner Mongolia, Liaoning and Jilin will begin to see snowfall. Snowfall in the west will increase. Parts of Qinghai and Tibet will also see snow. On Tuesday, Jiangxi and Hunan will begin to see wet weather, good news for relieving their recent dry conditions. Now finally, due to no strong cold fronts and only light winds in China, air quality in many places across the country is currently not so good. So if you are indoors, you are advised to ventilate fresh air into the house to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. Stay tuned now, World City Forecasts.
Hello, I'm Yang Rui reporting live from Beijing. China decides to take a tight monetary policy to prevent apparent inflation and overheating. This is the powerful message that the just concluded 3-day 2007 Central Economic Work Conference of the CPC delivered last Wednesday. At the same time, a prudent fiscal policy will be maintained to be coupled with tight monetary control. The year-end conference held in 2006 also set a similar tone for preventing the economy from overheating, but eventually the goal was not met. This year, the same expectations have been proved wrong. The excessive liquidity and the CPI of 6.5% serve as a warning shot for the highest authorities in China to further stimulate domestic consumption and to reduce and stem a strong rebound of investment in fixed assets. Joining us now here live are Mr. Wang Huiyao, Director of the China International Economic Cooperation Society, and Professor Michael Pettis with Tsinghua University. But first, let's look at this report.
China's 2007 Central Economic Work Conference concluded on Wednesday. The annual event is crucial for the CPC Central Committee and the State Council to plan the following year's economy. A key message from this year's conference is that China will tighten its monetary policy in 2008. For the first time in a decade, China will maintain a prudent fiscal policy for the coming year. Officials say that combined with a tight monetary policy, they will be able to prevent the economy from overheating and price hikes from evolving into real inflation. In 2006, the Central Economic Work Conference aimed to keep the GDP growth rate at below 8% in 2007, but this month, official figures suggest the country's economy is expected to expand 11.5%. In October, China's Consumer Price Index, a major gauge for inflation, rose a decade-high 6.5%. The figure stands well above the government's set warning level of 3%. Economists are optimistic about the guidelines set during the conference, but the actual results after they are implemented will be seen in 2008.
Welcome back to the studio discussion, gentlemen. It seems the centerpiece of the just concluded CPC economic conference has been highlighted by an overwhelming emphasis on the importance of adopting sort of prudent monetary policy. What does tightening the money